We often think of our minds and our bodies as, well, two separate things, right? But what if our deepest emotional struggles were actually physically shaping our health, right down to the cellular level? Today, we're going to dive into Dr. Gabor Maté's incredible work, and it reveals this hidden, powerful connection between our emotions, our stress, and chronic illness.
It sounds totally backwards, doesn't it? I mean, we're taught our whole lives to be agreeable, to be helpful, to put other people first. But Dr. Maté asks this really radical question. What if that very goodness, that inability we sometimes have to just say no, is actually coming at a devastating biological cost?
I mean, just think about the legendary baseball player, Lou Gehrig. They called him the Iron Horse because he played over 2,000 games in a row, a record. But this wasn't just about being tough. It was almost like a compulsion. He once played a game with a broken finger, wincing in agony every single time he caught the ball. And get this, X-rays later showed that every single one of his fingers had been broken at some point. He was just relentlessly dutiful to everyone else, but completely ignored the pain signals his own body was screaming at him long before the disease that now has his name finally forced him to stop.
And this pattern, it isn't just for famous athletes. Take a look at Laura's story. Right before she got diagnosed with breast cancer and then ALS, she took on this immense stress of starting a new business. But just notice where her focus is. It wasn't on the excitement of it all. It was on the guilt she felt, the financial risk, and the self-imposed pressure to do everything: run the business, manage the house, and decorate.
Wow. This example, this one might be the most telling of all. When Jill gets a life-altering diagnosis, her immediate, gut-level thought isn't for herself. It's for the people who depend on her. Her very first words are about being their pillar of strength. In her absolute moment of greatest need, her default programming was to worry about others. This is the exact pattern we're going to unpack.
So this brings us to our first big idea, this emerging link between a certain kind of personality and chronic illness. Lou, Laura, and Jill, they all share this common thread. It's a compulsive sense of duty, a real difficulty setting boundaries, and this almost automatic habit of pushing down their own needs and feelings for the sake of other people.
But you have to wonder, right? Is someone just born that way? Dr. Maté argues absolutely not. This personality isn't something you're born with. It's a strategy. It's a coping mechanism you learn in the one place we all learn our earliest survival skills, our childhood.
The key here is what's not being said. When a patient named Melvin was asked about affection at home, he didn't talk about hugs or warmth or feeling loved just for being him. He talked about achievements. His father was proud when he got his engineer's license. The unspoken lesson for a child in that environment is crystal clear. My value, the love and connection I need, it's conditional. It all depends on what I do, not on who I am.
Well, that kind of childhood experience can lead to what some researchers call compensating hyperindependence. Now, on the outside, it looks like incredible strength. But really, it's a defense. The child learns that their needs are a problem, that they won't be met. So they build this rigid belief that they have to handle everything themselves, that needing help is a sign of weakness. It's not real independence. It's a front that was built out of necessity.
And this is the most important part. For a child, that attachment to their parents is everything. It's literally about survival. So if expressing your real feelings, like anger or sadness, threatens that connection, the child will, completely unconsciously, choose to just bury those feelings. It's a brilliant, life-saving adaptation to keep them safe and connected in their family.
So, what happens when that brilliant childhood survival strategy gets carried into adulthood? Well, it becomes a deeply ingrained and often totally unconscious script. The very coping mechanism that once kept you safe now starts creating enormous invisible stress. And this right here is the core thesis of the entire book. When you repress emotions, especially powerful ones like anger, they don't just poof, disappear. Anger isn't just a thought, right? It's a physiological event. It gets your body ready for a fight or flight response. When you consistently push that feeling down, you don't cancel the response. You just turn it inward, against yourself. And that creates a chronic internal state of stress.
You can actually see the pathway pretty clearly. It starts with emotional repression. That kicks off a chronic stress response in your body, which is constantly flooding your system with hormones like cortisol. Over time, this messes with your hormonal balance, and crucially, it suppresses your immune system. And a weakened immune system is, well, it's just more vulnerable to disease.
Okay, this next point is absolutely essential to understand. This is not about blame. Dr. Maté really stresses that illness is not some kind of punishment for your personality. It is simply a physiological reality. It's a consequence, the same way a lifetime of smoking increases your risk for lung cancer. It's just biology, not morality.
So the takeaway here is pretty profound. All those unspoken no's, all that swallowed anger, all those unmet needs, they get recorded somewhere. Your mind might forget them or deny them, but your body keeps a perfect score. And eventually, it's going to present the bill.
All right, so we've seen the pattern, we've seen where it comes from, and we've seen the biological mechanism. Now that we understand how this stress actually becomes illness, what in the world can we do about it?
And this is where the whole story takes a hopeful turn. Because if the problem is a learned pattern of disconnecting from our emotions, then the solution has to be about learning how to reconnect with them. It's a skill, and Maté calls it emotional competence. So what does emotional competence actually look like? Well, it breaks down into 4 main skills. First, just the ability to feel our emotions and see them as important signals. Second, being able to express them in a healthy way. Third, learning to assert our needs and, say no. And finally, and this is a tricky one, learning to tell the difference between a reaction to what's happening right now versus an old echo from a childhood wound.
And the first step toward this, maybe surprisingly, is something Dr. Maté calls the power of negative thinking. I know, it sounds completely backward, but it is not what you think it is.
Let's just compare these 2 mindsets. Forced positivity is often based on a fear of reality, so we just suppress any so-called negative signals. The power of negative thinking, on the other hand, isn't about being a pessimist. It's about having the courage to ask, okay, what isn't working here? What is this symptom trying to tell me? What is my body saying no to? It's about listening to reality, and that's the only way to gain true autonomy. And this is just a perfect, real-world example. Joyce is a professor, and she finds it totally impossible to say no when people ask her to do things at work. So what happens? Her asthma flares up. Her body says no for her. Her illness becomes the boundary that she can't set for herself. She's not quite willing yet to just own her no, so her body is forced to scream it instead.
And that brings us to our final, and honestly, our most empowering section. The journey back to health is fundamentally about reclaiming our own autonomy. And the most powerful tool we have for that is learning how to voice a healthy, authentic no.
So at the end of the day, the ultimate message here is that your symptoms, your exhaustion, your illnesses, they aren't your enemies. They're messengers. Your body is always communicating with you, sending you signals about what's out of balance in your life. The real work is learning to listen to its language.
And that leaves us with one final, really provocative question to think about for yourself. If you were to stop for a minute and just listen, truly listen, past all the noise of obligation and duty, what is your body trying to tell you right now?